Welcome to Don't Fuck This Up, the podcast answering the ultimate question, how the fuck did you land that cool job? I'm your host, Lauren Alvarez. Hello and welcome to another episode of Don't Fuck This Up. Today we have a very special guest. I am joined by Bill Conway, founder and editor-in-chief of The Hard Times. Other talents of Bill's and titles include stand-up comic, 2004 ICC Church Mosh Champion of Boston,
That's true.
and all-around good dude. So Bill, welcome to Don't Fuck This Up.
No, thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel like we're talking about like a career, kind of iterations and evolution, and there's been a lot, which is great, I think, for you. Before we dive into all that, how are you actually doing?
Today I'm good. It could change tomorrow, but today's a good day. So yeah, everything's going well.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
That's
how are
awesome.
you doing? I mean, if nobody ever asks the podcast host how they're doing. How are you doing?
I mean, I'm great. I'm chilling. It's still a heat wave in LA. I don't care what they say. And
yeah, it's
humidity
3
makes
degrees
it feel
cooler
like
today.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. But yeah, no, I'm good. Again, it could all change in the matter of an hour. So
Right.
please keep your shit together. Yeah. I think talking about career and stuff, a lot of times understanding kind of where someone comes from helps give insight to how they got to where they are today. I mean, without being a therapist, can you tell us about young Bill?
Let's see. Young Bill grew up in the deep suburbs of Massachusetts to the point where you could almost call it rural. We're close.
Yeah.
Maybe one town over from the town I grew up in was considered rural because there was a lot of cows and dairy farms and stuff like that. But I don't know the exact demographic of when can you call something that. But either way, deep woods of Massachusetts, bog country, probably Trump country at this point. I think my hometown's a Trump town, which is unfortunate to say. But I think a lot of Massachusetts towns outside of the cities are all Trump towns. But yeah, I grew up in a little town called Hanson, Massachusetts, which is home of Ocean Spray Cranberry Factory originally. So that's the big claim to fame. Yeah, that's huge because of all the bogs, which I've mentioned. Let's see, my mom and dad got divorced when I was 8. Some tragedies with drunk driving accidents and stuff like that. All leading up to what I am today. Started skateboarding when I was 12, and at age 12, get introduced to skateboarding and punk and hardcore, and that's where it's like, okay, this is where you go from here.
Yeah. And I think, that's, I think all of us have had sort of the tragedies, and people are often like, oh, you're so resilient. And you're like, do you know how bad it sucked to go through all that shit? Do you know what resilience actually means? It means wow, how'd you not kill yourself? It's amazing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, totally. And I think that being, also from Massachusetts, Metro West, but probably on the cusp of rural as well. And I think that finding the hardcore and punk scene, and for you probably skateboarding, finding that community where you could just I think in the words of Bane, it's like a place where the strange were accepted, and it's I think that was a really important thing. Am I fishing, or is that on point for you too?
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, when you come from a small place, you just look for the similarities in people. It's like, all right, well, I was into sports, but I wasn't a jock. It was oh, I don't vibe with those people that are ultra competitive, but this skateboarding thing and going around and causing random mischief. And then I'm at the age where it's it's pre-internet, and so the random mischief was fun, and nobody was filming it. And then the CKY videos came out 3 years later, and all of a sudden it's oh wait, jocks are now jocks found this. Now jocks are being the people that are doing random misfit stuff as they push shopping carts in a Shaw's parking lot. And you're like, guys, we were doing this 2 years ago. What?
Totally, yeah. Stop biting our style.
Yeah, where you been?
Yeah, and also the unavoidable stuff of the Boston Beatdown, filmings and all that. Probably good, that we didn't have social media like we do now.
Yeah, I can't even. what world were we living in where Boston Beatdown actually like was produced, put out on DVD, like
People's
put out into
names
the
on the
world?
credits, like,
Yeah,
yeah, that was me. Like,
yeah.
what? Yeah.
Yeah, they took pride in it and then put it out in the world. Amazing stuff. Just a
Yeah.
completely different time.
Totally different time. And I think that like, it's so interesting because, that attraction to subculture is something that, I mean, at least from the outside looking in, that seems like a through line, in sort of the path that you took. But I'm curious, like, when did you realize you were funny? Because I think, knowing that you went into stand up and, I knew you back in the day, I was like, oh, of course, Bill's doing stand up. But like, what was that path like? Did you know you were funny going in, or did other people be like, dude, you need to do stand up?
All right, so being from Massachusetts, everybody is pretty funny in Massachusetts. There
That's
is no
totally true.
Yeah, there is no person that isn't funny from Massachusetts, like as a baseline.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you've experienced this now that you're not living in Massachusetts, that when you talk to somebody from Massachusetts, all of a sudden you can be like, hey, what's up, you fucking idiot? And, they don't get
Yes.
like offended. But like if you said that to somebody that is not a native and they're like, whoa, hey, easy, it's like, hey, well, I thought we were actually cool enough to joke around, but
Maybe not. Yeah.
yeah, you're taking this. This is a term of endearment when I call you a fucking moron. But
I mean, my husband's from the Bay Area, so that we had to really like forge the gap with the passive aggressive language because I don't speak passive aggressive. I'm just aggressive.
Yes, exactly. But out of my friend group, I would say I was easily the least funny, just more observant, of everybody. And like maybe it was a quip that was whispered behind, like there's like the class clown funny, which is like the people I hung out with. And then there's the, introverted, person that whispers the line into the class clown's ear, who screams it out. They get the big laugh, and you just sit there like, okay, oh, I'm a writer. That's what I am. I'm not a, I'm not a performer in a sense. I'm more of a writer. But I don't know when there was a time like before I started doing stand up when I was like in my late 20s, which like I would just tell people stories of some of like the dumb shit that happened in Boston, and they'd be like, that's crazy. That's a funny story. You should do stand up. And it like happened like 3 times in 1 week. And I was like, oh, all right, well, maybe I'll give it a try. How does that work? And then, started embarrassing myself publicly by trying to do stand up.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, were you doing stand up in Boston, or did that all happen when you moved out west?
Yeah, it started in San Francisco.
Okay.
Probably maybe 3 years after I moved west. I was working in a warehouse, listening to a lot of podcast, like comedy podcasts. This was like peak comedy podcast, your
Totally.
2010s, where everybody had one and they were like really funny. And there was just a lot of people like, like I remember listening to an episode of WTF, like an early one with this guy, Brendan Walsh. And he was talking about how he was working, loading trucks in Austin, Texas, and started doing stand-up. I was making more money on the weekends doing stand-up as I'm like loading trucks in San Francisco in a warehouse. I'm like, isn't that something? So like this is weird. But now at this point, like I see him walking around Los Angeles all the time. Like, hey, that's kind of the guy that told me to do this in a weird way, like,
yeah,
it's weird.
Totally. I think there's something funny because I know you live on the east side of LA too. We call it like east side celebrity sightings, where it's like the obscure host from your favorite podcast in 2010, or like it's never like, oh my god, it's Brad Pitt. Like that hasn't happened yet, but it's always like a La Colombe waiting in line on a Sunday morning, and you're like, I know that guy.
Yeah. I saw Kristen Schaal at Gelson's the other day, and I was like, oh shit, Kristen Schaal. I mean, here we go.
That's very cool. Yeah, very, very cool sighting. I mean, so you mentioned like you're more of a writer. You weren't writing down other people's jokes and regurgitating them. So you started writing, what you thought was funny. And were you writing down like verbatim for stand up? Because I think that was something I did stand up to when I lived in New York. And people would be like, so you write out all your jokes? I'm like, absolutely not. At least not for my process. Were you writing down jokes as you thought of them? Because you're working in a warehouse. There's definitely some funny shit happening there. Where was that coming from?
Yeah, I think for me, when I first started, like first couple months, I'm trying to write everything down and be like, I need to memorize this? And then realizing like, oh no, like when I see people doing stand-up, I can tell the people that have memorized their stuff. It's because like somebody could like light on, like spontaneously combust in the audience, and they would still just being like, yeah, and dating's weird. It's like, there's somebody on fucking fire. Talk about it, And I realized, that memorization wasn't for me because I kept, getting in my head almost too much of like, oh, what's that next line, instead of like learning just to, have a general outline, be open to like finding that extra thing that goes in there, and then just fine tuning. I tried to, I recorded a lot of my sets, and they're all like labeled in my phone, like dog shit set. This sucks. Like, don't re-listen to this. Absolute trash. Stuff like that.
When
real
does that
positive
audiobook
stuff.
come out with those, Bill? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that like, so you launched your podcasting career, at least to my knowledge, was the Edgeland, right? Edgeland podcast. That was almost 10 years ago. It was funny. I was like, when did that come out? And I looked it up. I was like, that was almost 10 years ago. Happy decade anniversary since you launched that. So, and it was about, the subculture of straight edge. You're still Edge, right? This is not Edge Watch.
Yeah, no, this still holding strong. I'm 39 now, so that would be 27 years claiming Edge, but still, I've never done anything. So 39 years of complete sobriety, of 27 years straight
gold
edge.
Star Edge guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, still straight edge. Yeah, turning 38. So like, still living the dream.
Yep.
And it's a rarity these days. But I mean, going into Edgeland and starting that podcast, did you start it with the intention of ever knowing how long it would run for, or were you just like, I need to talk to these people?
It was more of like my thought process was like, I feel like when you come from punk and hardcore, you have to give back in some way. You can't just go to shows and consume punk and hardcore. Like, so yeah. I'm not a musician. I'm not organized enough to book a show. I'm not I don't have any capital to be like, oh, I should book a show and risk this venue burning down and then never getting a deposit back. I'm not risk averse in that nature. So it was like, well, what can I do? I'll try this podcast. I'm lifelong straight edge. So if there's anybody that is at least qualified to talk about being straight edge, I know I can do that. So let's see who will actually talk about this. And the initial premise was talk to somebody that is currently straight edge and that used to be, and kind of feel like, is straight edge even like a valuable thing to people? Because sometimes it's not, like it can be damaging to some people.
Yeah, maybe we should add it to our LinkedIn's and just see what happens.
It can't hurt.
Yeah, exactly. It can't hurt. I feel like more often than not, people are like, what is that? Is that a gang? Yeah. Like you're doing what now? And now it's suddenly cool in LA not to drink. I'm like, okay, we were on the cutting edge of this years ago and we got so much shit for it and nobody liked us, but now you want to be in the like mocktail crew, please.
Yeah. No, thanks. I'll take my room temperature tap water and I'm out of here. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need a lime. Yeah. I mean, what have you learned since the early days of Edgeland? I mean, like I did you a solid. I didn't go back and listen to the earliest episodes, but I was a loyal listener back in the early days of Edgeland because it was like nobody else was talking about this shit. It was very interesting. But what have you learned since the early days?
So I don't know if it's a general, we talked about Edge Watch. Like, first off, let me just say the Edge is not going anywhere forever for me personally.
Yeah, same.
When you're in your 20s and your friend breaks Edge, you're like, you fucking piece of dog shit. Like, there's never been anybody lower than you right now. Like,
lowest of the low.
Yeah, there's you, leave a couple spaces, then there's Pol Pot, and then, it just, like, goes from there. Like, as far as how bad of a person you are. But as you get older, you're just like, yeah, people's perspectives change. I had just had a friend who's 42, and he's like, yeah, I broke Edge. I was like, what is it? He's like, THC gummies. And it's like, barely breaking Edge. But, he's like, and he's had severe back issues. Like he's got disc problems. It's like, all right, so it's either you manage pain with something that is less damaging than the, things that a doctor would prescribe to you that has led to an opioid pandemic, an epidemic that has destroyed multiple lives. Go with the THC gummies there, brother. But I was like, you're gonna start drinking? He's like, no. It's like, then we're good. Like, whatever. But I've just learned that at least with on the straight edge side of things, people do what they want to do. It's usually not a big deal. On the podcasting and like business side of things, is that like the connections that like I made from that show, like the little things, like, I mean, Edgeland is what led to what I'm doing now in like a sliding door scenario. So, and it was started out of creation of, I'm not doing this for anything other than I want to be doing this. Like this, there is no Edgeland's going to be $1 million property because what is there 28 straight edge people left in the world at this point? You know,
Yeah,
like
and you're looking at two of them. So who are the
yes,
other 26? Yeah.
yeah. So it wasn't a. All right, I have found the podcast premise that is going to launch me into the stratosphere of the podcast. Like I am going to
But
take
wait,
off
there's
with this
more.
one.
Yeah.
Not only am I talking to straight edge people, I'm talking about to washed up hardcore people. You know, like that's what we really need. Yeah, so like those just doing things for the process, and like I learned, you know, how to edit a podcast. I learned
Yeah.
best like how to make social graphics, what best time to post, like dumb little things that's like, yeah, you don't learn that stuff until you do it, you know.
Yeah.
And that was the interesting part about that podcast world back then.
Yeah, it probably beats, draining all the printer ink at your mom's house, printing out Pantera things to tape to your skateboard. So
exactly.
Your graphic design skills have come a long way. So, I mean, you alluded to like the sliding door scenario of, the hard times. So how was that conceived?
So when back, I mean, this is nearly 10 years ago. So it's like 2013. There's a band, Zero Progress. They're a Bay Area straight edge band that Matt Sankum, who is one of the, I had him on the podcast because I had seen him posting videos that I found funny. I was like, this guy is funny. He's doing a satirical, like almost professional wrestling take on straight edge tough guy hardcore bands, which I find funny. And had him on the podcast, and we kind of like clicked. And then I randomly saw he made a Facebook post like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a Onion for hardcore, basically. And I mean, above me is every Onion book that's ever been, published. And loyal reader, especially in San Francisco, when they had the print editions, I would go every Tuesday and pick up multiple copies. And so I just had like the satirical news voice in my head. I had been doing stand up for a couple years. So it's like, I think I can write jokes. So we got together, like I was like, I'll write 100 headlines tonight. And then I did, basically, and we started working closer together. And then that relationship, which, I mean, I had him on the podcast in February, and then it was November that year where I saw his Facebook post. So I could have scrolled right past that, never seen it. Yeah. And then just, it never would have happened. So it's all just like the little things. But and then the hard times started in 2014, like November 2014. And from there, it's become a thing, which is always weird to me. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because it's like I really appreciate you saying that too, is starting out and not wanting to, say, okay, I'm going to be the number one most successful person at this. And I think there is a misconception a little bit of, I've had people who, I've mentored and coached before, and they sit down with me and they literally open a notebook or maybe their notes app if it's more Gen Z, let's be honest. But they're like, okay, so what do I need to do to get promoted? And I'm like, what? Or like to be successful, or I want to start this thing. How do I do it? And I'm like, there's not a checklist that you go through. And you certainly can't start out saying like, I want to make $1 million by year one and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, hey, if somebody can do that and they have the discipline, tell me all your secrets. That sounds great. But right. I really think that it is kind of a grind. It is something that like, we need to work toward. And usually those things are fortuitous. Like, I think, like maybe I've been in LA for too long and I'm getting woo woo, but I'm like, the universe makes no mistakes. So like when you mentioned sliding door, like, opportunity that presents itself, like that post showed up, and you're right. You totally could have missed it, but you didn't. And then like, here you are almost 10 years later, and you've had like this amazing opportunity to now, this is your full-time gig, right?
Yes, I've been full-time hard time since like 2019. Okay. So like 4 years now, which is, I mean, it started like, even with stand up, like going to that, it's like, there's no, I mean, there are the people, like, let's be real, there's a little bit of delusion of the people that are like, oh, I'm going to be headlining Madison Square Garden in 3 years, like, and I have an hour of material. It's like, first off, you won't be headlining like a Jersey Mike's in 10 years, and you have 5 minutes of material. Let's be completely honest.
Yes.
But they're like, starting out with like the stand-up thing, there was no illusion of, oh, I'm going to get so good. It's just like the process of doing this, and you fail over and over again. And skateboarders have talked about this forever, about being like, oh, skateboarding teaches you how to fail because you fall. And it's like, yes, we know. You fall
Yeah.
a bunch, you ride away that one time, you're happy, and yeah, it's all stupid and pointless. But that's what most things are, So you just working towards the little goals. Like I started out doing stand up being like, I want to be able to pay my cell phone bill through comedy. And when that happened, it was like, cool. And then I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I could pay my rent. And it's like, that's happened. And now it's like, be cool if I could make this a career. And now it's happened. And it's still like, you make it to those benchmarks and it's cool for like a week, but then like, it's like, oh shit, well, now I have to maintain this. The stress of keeping that up it can be. A friend of mine had posed a question on like Instagram stories, like, when were you happiest, when you had like a mindless job that you just clocked out of, or working your dream job? It's like, well, technically I have my dream job and I'm more stressed out doing it. It was actually like, I was probably happiest working in a warehouse listening to podcasts for 8 hours, and just being like, and clocking out at 5 o'clock and then going skateboarding. But I also wouldn't trade it in a weird way where it's like, oh, it's in a weird way, writing dumb jokes about Henry Rollins is more fulfilling than, loading up a truck in 100-degree heat in the summer. Go figure.
Yeah. No, and I think that that's amazing, and I think that hearing that perspective, like I've certainly felt that myself of like, I grew up, relatively, without, in terms of like, finances, support from my parents, you name it. And so that scarcity mindset is sort of dictated for me, at least, like some of the things that I've done or haven't done, like take the big tech job because like stock sounds pretty safe. That sounds safe. Okay, I'll do that. And then it's like, yeah, but like it's sort of stealing my soul a little bit, like not to sound so contrived, but yeah. And then when you do something that's like deeply satisfying work, that is hard work. It's like, you don't just like sign on video and you're like, cool, I'm on a podcast, let's do this. It's like, it's a grind, like you're doing a lot of work, you're doing a lot of outreach, it's a numbers game oftentimes. Like same thing with stand up, like, for every show that you kill, you could do the same set and the crowd thinks that you absolutely suck and they're dusty books and they're not responding. I've been there, it sucks. And then you kind of like brush off that and you keep moving forward. How do you balance that kind of like scarcity mindset of like, what if everything goes away tomorrow versus, that thing of like, but if I stay in this job loading boxes in a warehouse, like, is this my life?
Yeah. So there was like a decision I made when I lived in Portland. There was like the hard times was going okay. I'm still working full-time warehouse job. And it's one of those things like the hard times is trending up. And it's like, all right, every decision I have made in my life has been a safe decision, and it has led me to working in this warehouse right now, like, so why don't I, and at this point I was thinking like, I had just done like an interview to be part of the electricians union in Portland. So like getting a union job as an electrician, you're kind of set for life almost. Like it's your career. It's like, it's your path. It's laid out in front of you. You're going to do 20 to 30 years as a union electrician. You're going to get a pension. You're going to be able to retire, whatever. You're just going to be an electrician from there on out. And I was like, so I did the test and I like passed it and got the letter that I was accepted in the union. I just had to confirm. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this right now. I'm going to pursue the hard times, because every decision I've made, like the safe choice was go be an electrician and go be in the union. But everything I had done up until then was the safe choice. I'm in a warehouse, which is, fine for everybody that works in a warehouse. I am not trying to diminish anybody, because like I said, that's when I was happiest, was working that job in a strange way. But so the decision not to do that and to continue to push with the hard times led me to, being able to go full time with the hard times, and so it was like, all right, did I make the right decision though long term, where it's like the internet could go away tomorrow, but union electricians will still be needed. So my skills of writing jokes about, random hardcore eccentricities and stage dives and stuff like that, like isn't as valuable as being able to wire a new high-rise apartment.
Yeah, but I think that also knowing that exists, I mean, growing up outside of Boston, like, we saw so many blue collar workers and, that is kind of the dream and you see that. But also like knowing like that's always going to be there, like you said, taking that chance and going out, like, what's the worst that happens? Yeah, like, okay, the internet gets switched off by some giant switch that we didn't know existed. Okay,
Mhm.
and then what? Then you can go rewire some high rises. Great. And you can be anywhere for that, you know? And so I think that, I mean, it's amazing that you were able to take the chance. I mean, what's the worst pre-hard times job you ever had?
Uh, as you all pre-hard times jobs I had were kind of similar. Like after age 19, I worked in electrical supply warehouses, which are basically all the same.
Yeah.
And I mean, as much as you complain, like I could complain about those jobs, it's like you meet like fun people, like
Yeah.
they're just working class
Characters.
people.
Yeah.
They're just like, you're a fucking nut, man. You're
Yeah.
insane. But um, I'd say my first job I was at a Dunkin' Donuts in Hanson, which was probably the worst one because I mean you're wearing khaki pants and a purple polo that is, you know, I'm 120 pounds, like, and they only have size larges, and so I'm like swimming in it, and
Like
there
the
was
M&M of Dunkin' Donuts drive-through. That's what I'm imagining.
yeah. And there was two different times where customers almost fought me, a 16-year-old, you know. It's just like what is your life that you have come in and threatened like a child, you know? Like it's but that's the, you know, that's Massachusetts for you. Everybody's going to try to fight you, no matter how old you are.
Definitely. I mean, so, I mean, what was it like, you know, when you made the decision to go full time? Did you feel like you had to like come out as a podcaster? Did you have to like announce this to your family and let them know that, hey, I'm not going in this direction? Or, you know, was there support there? What was that like?
I think, you know, you mentioned similarly, like parental support not always being there. Like my mother still does not understand what it is that like she'll.
That's how you know you have a fun job, is when your parents don't understand it. You're like, cool. Yeah.
She has stopped asking like, how's the electrical stuff going, which is like good, you know,
Yeah.
but she also cannot ask any questions of how's this current thing doing because she will not she has no point of reference. And honestly, I really have no point of reference, you know, for it.
You're like, I think it's good. I'm not sure.
So yeah, it's just a weird thing. Like, I mean, my dad, when he was alive, he died when I was 19. Like he talked, like his big dream for me was like be an electrician and a plumber. 2 licenses, you can do it all. And it's just like, hey, he's not wrong. But like, you know, that was the, like, it wasn't like go be the president. His peak was plumber and electrician at the same time. That was as high as his mind would allow him to go as far as this is the dream for your child.
Was he one or the other or neither?
He was not, he was like a laborer, you know, so he was on construction sites, but didn't have any licenses to speak of. So
Sounds
I mean,
like my dad, totally. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, I think that's, you know, it's interesting because family, you know, when you have to explain it, and you're like, you know what, I could explain this 10 times over, and they're still not going to know. So we'll just walk away from it. So, you know, you're working at Dunkin' Donuts like at that younger age. Like, so did you go to college or?
Yeah. So I went to a vocational high school. So
Cool.
I was in an electrical program. So coming out of that, but I did really well in high school. I was second in my graduating class. Like I missed valedictorian by like 0.03 of a point. You know, I
think in Boston
close.
they just call you a Sal. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And so I got a scholarship to UMass Lowell. So I went to that but it was one of those things I've since listened to like podcasts about it. It's like, if you're the first person in your family to go to college, the likelihood of you not finishing college is super high. And it was exactly what happened with me, where it's not that my parents weren't supportive. They just had no way of guiding me in any way.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, I'm on my own. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And this kind of sucks. And my scholarship got messed up. It could have possibly been my fault, but it was also some advisors didn't sign me up for like enough credits. And then I got this like letter that was like, you don't have enough credits to even have the scholarship. So I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
I didn't even have control over this. And I felt like, oh, this is all just wanted to destroy me anyway. They never wanted me here. And it was like, all right, I'll just go work in a warehouse. And so I went to a semester and a half at UMass Lowell. And when I left, I left mid-semester. My roommate in the dorms was like a super Christian guy, very, very nice, but like we had literally nothing in common. There was no point of reference. And so when I was moving out, I printed up a letter that implied I had died tragically, like in like put like official UMass lol like letterhead on there and like slipped it under the door. And so he might think that I suddenly died over the weekend, which
Oh my
was
God.
yeah, the
And
delightful
if
prank.
you didn't know you were funny before, you definitely knew you were funny then. That's fucking awesome. And also, like, your name is fairly ungoogleable. I mean, Bill Conway, there's many of you, at least in New
Yes.
England. So that's really smart thinking on your end.
Yeah, if he looks me up now, like I could be that billionaire Bill Conway that's out there.
I've seen that guy, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Probably a lot of questionable politics on that guy. So yeah, I'm not that. I'll take his bank account, but nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so what do you think is like, I mean, a semester and a half is a semester and a half more than I did in college. You know, I didn't have the parental support, like can definitely align with that. And also like, it was just going to put me in debt. And I was like, make money or go into debt doing something I don't like doing, even though I was good at school. I just didn't love it.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest like misconception about going to school in terms of college and advancing in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like too like Bay Area tech guy. You don't need college sort of stuff because like
Yeah.
I
Some
feel
people
like
do. Like if you're doing surgery on me, please have gone to a lot of college. All the
yeah,
college.
yeah. I don't want like a YouTube self-taught surgeon, you know, at any point. But I do feel like all right, there's a difference in just all right. So you and I kind of grew up in like the punk and hardcore scene. You meet a lot of different people. There are some people that the first time they meet somebody that's different is in college, you know, and it's just like, oh, this is like when I went to college, there was no like awakening of like this is all these people. It's like I've been doing that since my freshman year of high school because of skateboarding and punk and hardcore and just all these different subcultures. And I think college is valuable to expose you to different ideas and new things. And that's probably the biggest thing is just the social aspect of it. Now, the educational and financial aspect is best only because when you apply for a job, everybody wants to see some sort of college, you know, experience on there. And it's like, well, hey, baby, I went to the school of hard knocks, you know, so I got real world experience.
Or you can do what I did and just lie that you went to college on your resume for a certain amount of years, and then you take it off, and you're like, yeah, that was fake.
Yeah. Does anybody check? I mean,
I've never not passed a background check. So shout out to my old employers for faking it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start saying I went to Brown, you know. And like,
fuck it.
And yeah, but yeah, I think that's the most beneficial thing for most people. Is like, all right, so. And I do think that everybody should move away from their hometown. You know, you cannot stay where you grew up. And so if you're going to go to college, like, and you have the means and you live on the East Coast, go to the West Coast. If you live on the West Coast, go to the East Coast for college.
So just don't go to the middle.
Yes. Oh, the middle doesn't count. You know,
there is no middle. Yeah.
I live my life by this. If your state does not have a port, then it is not a state. All right. It's, you need a port, some sort of access to the ocean. Like get out of here, you non-ocean, bordering states.
I think it is like a New England thing, but being landlocked totally freaks me out. I'm just like not with that.
Yeah. I mean, it is weird on the West Coast. You're just driving in the different direction to the beach. And I feel like I have a terrible internal compass, but when I drive to the beach in LA, I'm like, I'm going in the wrong direction to get to the beach here. Like this isn't going to be Nantasket.
Yeah, that is very true. It is not Nantasket, but it, you know, if you go to Venice, then you might find some needles. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I usually go needle hunting there.
Yeah, needle hunting. Yeah, I mean it brings back Revere, right? Revere Beach all the way. Yeah. I mean, you know, on that note, kind of before we go into like talking a little bit more about like success and the perception of that, I mean, I feel like it's a really good time to play a rapid fire game called North Shore, South Shore.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, so this is for you. This is Massachusetts specific. And if you don't get it and you're listening, then you should probably go to Massachusetts, right, Bill?
Yes, that's right.
All right.
Learn how to pronounce the city names and town names, and then or you're just going to get laughed out of the nearest CVS. You know.
Exactly. So that is actually my first question before we go into either or is what is the most commonly mispronounced town in Massachusetts in your opinion, and is it on the North Shore or South Shore?
I'm going to say the easiest one is Worcester, just because of the the size of the city and how often it comes up.
That's true.
So, middle. But I do think North Shore has more unpronounceable things like Billerica and stuff like that.
Shout out to Peabody.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really funny. Like there's definitely some good ones. Drake it really threw me off. Yeah.
Gloucester. Gloucester will fuck some people up.
Yeah, totally. They had it coming. Okay, so we're leaning toward North Shore. Best ice cream.
That's going to be South Shore all the way because of Peaceful Meadows, which is for sale. But I'm also vegan.
Are you going to buy
now.
it? Are you buying
my brother was like, "Should I try this?" I was like, "You have no investment plan. Like, what are you going to do? Own a dairy farm? You fucking weirdo." But all right, so I have to go back to while living in Massachusetts as a vegan now. I'm just so disgusted by all of ice cream, but
and dairy farms.
Yes, yeah, they all make me sick. But those Peaceful Meadows in Whitman, Massachusetts, was the best ice cream. The Reese's Sundae Shake thing. Well, I mean, shut it down.
You did put me onto that. I will credit you 1,000%. Worst accent.
That's North Shore by a mile. It just gets you go above Methuen. It's trash.
It's garbage.
Yeah.
Merrimack Valley. What did you say? Yeah.
Awful.
Best place to take a scenic drive.
Oh, geez, in Massachusetts, scenic drive. I'm gonna say it's not going to Cape Cod, but it is on the South Shore in like the Plymouth Carver woods there, which is very woods dense, but it's back roads, and there's not just. It's like, all right, time has forgotten these places. There's no condos popping up here. It is
just
maybe that's changed. And yeah, exactly. You still see the ghosts of pilgrims.
Yeah. All right. Which one has like the worst aesthetic in terms of hair and style?
I mean, South Shore has always been the premier style capital of Massachusetts. Like everybody
I thought you
there
might say that. Yeah.
Like. When we wear sweatpants to go to Stop and Shop, it's because it was stylish and not just a lazy choice. But when people on the North Shore do it, it's disgusting. And with their spiked hair and bleached tips and their they're too much cologne. Get out of here, North Shore.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So you got something against Italians. That's what I heard you say. Most likely to get in a fight.
All of it. It's
all of the above.
Yeah. There is no, that is the one uniter. I have North Shore hates the South Shore hates the North Shore. Everybody hates anything west of like Franklin or whatever.
Totally.
But everybody is willing to fight, except when you get out to the Berkshires. Then they're like, no, it's cool, man. You're like, oh god,
they're trying to meditate.
Yeah, the fighting stops at like Chicopee.
Yeah, that's good. So if you're on the Mass Pike, you get past Chicopee, you're safe. You can get out of your car now. Yeah, totally. All right. So which would you rather live in now if you had to move back?
I
know
that now that's the hard hitting question. I feel like I wouldn't want to live where I grew up, it's like I'd have to do North Shore just to experience the different, like, all right, can I fall in love with Bellingham? Yeah.
Yeah, catch you living your best nautical life. All right, cool. I mean, and favorite New England sports team, just out of curiosity.
I follow the Patriots the most.
Me too. It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, I was telling a buddy of mine, like, we were both kind of like, we're like talking after last season, like we're out on the NFL, right? Like it's a trash organization, like it's morally corrupt. And then like a week ago, I was just like, shit, football's starting up soon. Like, yeah, hell yeah. And it's like, oh, god damn it. Fucking hooked me again. I thought I was out.
It's like in our pores. I don't know what it is. And it's
like a birthright.
It is a birthright. I also got pretty amped on the Celtics, and like can't really quiet that down, though we are kind of a Warriors household now. I'm like,
oh, geez.
Yeah. When you're edgy and you're a jock. Yeah.
I'm so stupid. I didn't realize Golden State Warriors were a California team until I moved to California. And like, I just didn't know where they were based. I was like, Golden State Warriors. Like, I just thought they were like existed. And I was like, oh, they're a Bay Area team. Like, that's how dumb I am.
Well, I mean, it'd be like the Utah Jazz. Like, that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah.
What's
No, I
jazzy
mean
about Utah?
everybody in Utah is big into that particular genre of music. It's the jazz capital of the world.
Yes, definitely. I mean, okay, cool. So thank you for indulging me. I was just like kind of dying to know your perception. It seems like you're still very much from the South Shore. That's my
Yes,
assessment. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. With pride, South
With
Shore pride.
pride, South Shore pride. Wow. It's like, just catch you in Brockton. At
Yeah,
Romans.
yeah. Come to Rome and see what happens if you're going to talk shit on the South Shore. All
I
right?
don't think it exists anymore.
No,
I'm
it
pretty sure
doesn't.
it's gone.
I think they keep trying to bring back like new Brockton venues, like to have the same mystique and stuff like that. And it's just like it gets shut down after one show because you got some 400-pound guy that like spin kicks somebody through a wall and like, cool, still happening, huh?
Yeah, I wonder what their insurance policy looks like there. It's got to be out of control.
Yeah.
But I mean, so let's talk a little bit about like people wanting to pursue that career in media. I mean, I think like a mistake people often make, and we talked a little bit about this, is like, when someone is quote successful, and a very subjective word there, when they kind of assume that things were handed to you, how does that make you feel? Like, how does that kind of commentary, like, what does that do to your South Shore spirit?
Yeah. I mean, there's even like on like the lowest level, like if I see like I am not immune to criticism. Like if like we make a joke on the hard times that is maybe like uncouth or even just like lazy or something, it's like, fine, yeah, we're putting out so much content, whatever. But if somebody like says something, I'm like, you don't understand how much hard work actually goes into like every dumb little thing, you motherfucker. And it that goes back to even like the Edgeland podcast where it's like, I do not leave if I don't like something, I simply ignore it and I just like do not engage with it. The people that leave negative comments, like, what is so sad in your fucking life that you have to do this? Like, you fucking loser. And I think I've probably always been that way in a way where it's like, if a band sucks, I didn't go on Lamb Goat and being like, this fucking band is trash,
You were
like,
on the Bridge 9 board. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
But
think that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, so do you read the comments? Is that what you're saying? You read the comments?
So on Instagram, I do not read any comments, but on Twitter, like if somebody shares something, we try to like, retweet it or something like that. So occasionally I will see things, and like somebody the other day, like we just relaunched our merch store and they're like, oh, so does this mean that this form of content's going to go away? Like it was like, we're doing some more list stuff. And I was like, and it was like a negative thing. I was like, I don't know, how many shirts did you buy today? Like, did you make sure, like, if you do not like this but want to continue to support the hard times, you could buy a shirt and then maybe that go away. And it turned into like a thing. I was like, I just have to ignore this guy, like, because everybody on the internet's fucking crazy. But yeah, it's just a little people, they want your attention, like, and as soon as they get it, they're going to do whatever they can to keep it. But we have mainly positive interactions with the hard times at this point. Like most people are pretty cool, and it's a base of people that want to just engage. It's like, oh, this is for me. I get to have a comedy product for me, and and then there's the people that hate it, and they have that opinion. If I didn't run the hard times, I might hate the hard times because I might be like, oh, I could do that better. I might be one of those people.
So try and do it better. If somebody's feeling that way. I mean, yeah, we live in a world that's like filled with parasocial relationships and energy vampires. And there is a lot of receptiveness to the hard times. I mean, do you feel challenged to set boundaries when it comes to how much time and energy you give back to those commenters?
Yeah, I mean, as little as possible for anybody that's like, for positive feedback, it'll be like, hey, thank you, appreciate it, like, be as, kind as possible without opening up a, hey, so what are you up to today? Sort of thing, like, just a quick, like, thank you, appreciate your support, like that stuff. That's great. And if I met somebody out in the world, like while I'm walking my dog, that says like, hey, I love the hard times, be like, cool. How did you recognize me? Like, that's weird.
East Side celebrity. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, for the negative stuff, legitimately no time for it, because it's that person is way worse off than, you are, if they are taking the time to try to say anything negative. Like, just fuck off, loser.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you the advice you could share, with listeners if they're struggling with this, but I think you just said it, just like fuck them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You need to do what you think is like, if your process is what you want to be doing, like if you listen to every bit of feedback, like, then you're just going to spiral, because there's going to be like 3 positive things, 5 negative things. You're like, wait, which one do I weigh more? It's like, no, do what you think is best and keep just producing that which makes you mentally fulfilled. And the people that like it will find you. The people that don't like it don't matter, because there's so many fucking people in the world. Like, carve out the small, like, not everybody likes every band ever, and there are very successful bands, so.
And they shouldn't. Like, if you're for everybody, like, what's the fucking joy in that? It's like starting out and being like, I want to have an incredible empanada restaurant. And then you're like, but what about people who want salad? What about people who only eat chicken? And then all of a sudden you have a fucking new American restaurant called like, Willow and Branch or something. That might be a restaurant. Sorry if it is.
I think it opened up at the Americana last week,
exactly.
actually.
Yeah, you'll see it in Glendale. But like, why water it down to like be something for everybody?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is what I think, especially in the early days, was attributed to the hard times, like building of success was like, oh, I understand this joke about Pennywise.
Yeah.
Nobody's made that joke about Pennywise before. But I've been listening to punk since I was 12. And now this is something for me. And, we try to keep that as much as possible when we do our stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also I appreciate you sharing that all too, because I think some people really get caught up in like, am I going to be successful if I don't respond? And the answer is like, yeah, probably so. If your content is good, is what you're putting out is good, your service you're providing is good, whatever it is, like, yeah, it's going to be good. I mean, so the word success, super subjective. Success versus perceived success, like, especially in LA, what's that been like for you?
So that's like I think something like, there's a pro skateboarder, Jerry Sue, who I actually have seen around a couple times, and like, he's a skateboarder I've been watching since, forever. And it's like, that's Jerry Sue. And he put out like an interview, and it was kind of like etiquette wise for how to approach a pro skateboarder. Okay. And it was like, like, just remember that they're normal people.
Yeah.
And also, you're probably way better off than they are. And it's like such like an interesting thing of like, oh, I've seen this guy in videos since I was 16. But what is the path to living a pro skateboarder life? You dedicate your life to this thing that breaks you. You have surgeries and all this stuff. Unless you're one of the 1% of the 1% of pro skateboarders that has a huge Nike shoe sponsor, you're making enough money to pay rent for your 1 bedroom that you share with 4 other skateboarders or something like that, And so like, yes, I'm a successful pro skateboarder, but you are if you went into engineering, you might be able to have bought that house, years ago. So similarly, when you have a career in any artistic form, like when I first moved to LA, I was working at Ballard Hardware, over there on Hyperion. Yeah. If go see Craig over there if you want to.
I'm pretty sure Craig has helped me many times.
Yeah. Craig is a great guy. And then there's Joe, his nephew's kind of running the place, and there's Dave. He's in the back. Oh, here's the quick sidebar. One of the old timers that works there, I forget his name right now, but he's so old. This is how old he is, that he was interviewed by the police after the Manson LaBianca murders, because he might have been the guy that sold them the rope to tie up the LaBiancas in their house on Waverly, like way back in the day. That's how long that place has been open. That's how old he is. And he was trying to like go on a date with one of the Manson family girls. But
and one of them like, just got out, so maybe he's in luck. Yeah, just hit her up. But so when I was working at like Ballard Hardware, I'm still running the hard times, like, as soon as I get off work, I'm doing hard time stuff, and then I'd go do open mics, and people would be like, wait, the hard times isn't a full-time thing? Like, no, it's not. Like, I mean, you can't like I thought you guys had an office. I thought you guys had like this and that. It's like, no, like online publishing, there's not a lot of money in that. It is in all aspects a terrible business to get into, so so like
if the Hard Times made as much money as people assume it did, then I'd be on a yacht right now doing this interview. But it's not how it is. We have a big social media following. We have a lot of people that are fans of us, and that is all great. But it does not translate, because in this media landscape where fans can do micro targeted advertising through Google, Amazon, and Facebook, they're not taking out a $25,000 ad package to buy the sidebars on the Hard Times. But if we started in 2008, that might have been a different story when advertising, actually mattered. So there is,
that's fired.
Yeah. So there's like a general perception of like, and that's, I think, goes on with the writers' strike that's going on in Hollywood right now, and the actors' strike, where people, maybe people back home from where I'm, be like, all those rich actors are on strike. It's like, bro, they're getting that rich actor got $250 to show up for a 12-hour day one time.
Right.
Believe me, they didn't seem rich when they were bagging groceries at Gelson's that day. Like it is crazy just how things work like that. And I'm guilty of it too, where it's like you think somebody is more successful than they are because they're on like a Netflix show, and you're like, oh right, they don't pay shit. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that path toward like success, and success is different for everybody. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's, lifestyle, sometimes it's, exposure or content or whatever. And some of it's, just the freedom of like having, the choice to do what they want when they wake up in the morning. And so I think that like, yeah, you're right. I think especially you see it a lot in LA. I was in New York for a long time. You also see it there too, on a different level. But here, I think because there's such a focus on the entertainment industry as it comes to like writing and media, there is kind of this perception of like, what does that look like, and how easy it is to get there. And it's like, absolutely not. Or that they're, have a silver spoon and, they're just being served whatever they need all the time. And also there's something to be said about like when you were at Ballard. I remember listening probably early Hard Times days. There was a Fred Armisen episode.
Yeah.
And you met him because you worked at Ballard, right?
Yeah, I cut Fred Armisen's keys for his, whatever.
Did you cut an extra one and keep it?
Yes, multiples. And I actually, I sell them to certain bidders, and I just don't know his address. So I try every single house from this side of Wilshire or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, he was in there. I just happened to be the one working the key machine turnaround. Fred Armisen's there. He had like a new show that just came out that my wife and I watched on Amazon. I was like, hey, I really liked that show. And I think it was one of those things of like, oh, somebody said something that's a recent thing that I worked on, instead of being like SNL, and it's just like, and I know he's got a punk and hardcore background and stuff like that. And, and then he came over to my house and we recorded a podcast, and it was just like, this is weird. Fucking Fred Armisen is in my house and he's petting my cat. It's all strange.
What was your kind of most awkward celebrity or personal hero moment that you've encountered? Because you've interviewed like some really cool people. I'm a fan of your new podcast, the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. You interviewed, the first episode was the Birdman. How are you going to top that? But then Jamie Thomas was really good too. But, so what was your most awkward? Have you totally biffed it?
Thankfully, I thought I biffed the Tony Hawk one on my drive home, but when I re-listened back to it, I was like, all right, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Because I was nervous, I was like, because I'm at his house, and I'm in his guest house recording with him. He's so friendly and all this. And I'm like,
that was your first time meeting him, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I could barely remember what language I spoke, I was just like, what am I going to ask this guy? There's so many questions I want to ask him. Like, how do I distill it down while also being present and being like, well, I want to see where he takes the conversation so I can feed off of that. But thankfully, I don't think I've completely biffed anything in my own. Maybe if you ask, all right, there was a time. Not that he's everybody knows at this point that he's kind of like a trash bag, but John Joseph threatened to stab us because we used Riverside for our podcast as well.
Yeah.
And you need to use Google Chrome for it. And I think he's a Firefox guy because he's living in 2003 or whatever. And so when he used Google Chrome, like none of his saved tabs were there, and he was like, "You guys fucked up my computer. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. I'm gonna." And it's just like, bro, so somebody 15 years younger than him was just like, "Click this," and it was good. But that was the closest we've ever come to any real problems. Was a I'm gonna call him a boomer, a hardcore boomer. Ineptitude on to be on a podcast.
Yeah, totally. I mean, virtual fisticuffs can be a thing, I guess,
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
You never know.
Yeah, I mean, you do. Yeah, you never know. I mean, so it might be the same answer of I was just talking about Tony Hawk, but like, do you have a favorite guest you've sat down with since you started podcasting? Top 3?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, Tony Hawk and Jamie Thomas. I mean,
yeah,
just for that pod, it's as much as like punk and hardcore are like special to me. Like skateboarding is always the first thing, and like those two guys especially. Like Jamie Thomas was close to the first video I ever bought, which was Welcome to Hell, and obviously Tony Hawk is Tony Hawk. There's no introduction. Brian Baker from Minor Threat, interviewed him for Edgeland, was a huge one because, I mean, it's Minor Threat, it's the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
So getting to talk to him, and the worst part about that interview is I accidentally deleted it while trying to clean some files on my computer, and I thankfully was able to recover it, but that was like 24 hours of me just like wanting to die. Like, I just deleted Brian Baker's interview. How does this happen? But yeah, I think those got to be my top ones.
That's awesome.
Right there. Yeah.
I think that's super fun. I mean, is there a personality type do you think does better, like in a podcasting, or like media based career? Like, and I know that, Hard Times is more than there's the podcast component, there's the website, there's the social, but is there a type of person? Is it all Geminis like you? Like, what is it? Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be a broken person to do most of this. Like a person that's like, oh, I will just, if you handed me a shovel and you're just like, dig, and be like, all right, I'll just keep digging, until we're done, I guess. It's like, I'll tell you when we're done, and you just keep digging. That's the personality type that I think you just have to be willing to know that work sucks. You just got to do it, and then you just got to keep working at it. And it's just like, but it becomes like, well, what sort of work do you want to be doing? And if, hey, you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. That's what they all say.
That is what they all say.
Yeah.
But as we talked about earlier, it's actually a lot more work to do what you love.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fucking grind.
It's not only a grind, but it's also like, wait, money is a whole fake concept. Am I getting my fake money from this fake thing that I do? Like,
because my rent is very real. Yeah.
Yeah. My landlord will evict me. This will happen.
You can't just be like, check out this episode of The Hard No. They didn't go for it. They didn't take the bait.
Yeah. But Jamie Thomas talked to me for an hour, though.
Actually, I learned so much from that Jamie Thomas interview. I think that's like one of the cool things that you've managed to incorporate is like there is a lot of learnings that come from it, because I thought I like knew quite a bit about them. I mean, I played a lot of Tony Hawk. Then I was like, this wasn't about the video game really at all. This was about like the ACL story, and like all of that just like totally blew my mind. And I think that's cool, like when you can really get people to open up to like a different side. So I would also say like probably someone who's like naturally curious is going to do better than someone who's just like going to take the notes and be like, okay, I can read the cue card. Like there's no cue card. Yeah.
I do. There was, when my co-founder Matt and I were doing the Hard Times podcast, we had completely different styles. Like, he comes from a journalism background where he has his 15 questions and I have 0 questions written down. Like, where it's just like, like it's a,
so you end up with 7.5 questions.
Exactly. And there was a little bit of, like pushback between the styles where he's like, you're not prepared enough. I'm like, you're over prepared. We were going down like this path, and then it got derailed by this question, and it was like, well, we completely flamed out because you didn't have anything prepared. And it's like, there's benefits to both, but I do think that, having a healthy mix of preparation and the willingness to be like, this could go off the rails at any second, and I just want to fucking go with it. Let's see where this goes. Like, if this person is a complete psychopath. I want to, see where this person's brain goes instead of just being like, oh, so when did you record that album and what were some stories from the recording studio?
Totally. Just crack it wide open.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe we're already coming up on time. This has been like super fun to chat through. I mean, I'd love to, understand kind of what can we expect from you next? I mean, we've got the Tony Hawk podcast. I know you said it's me sporadic. Can you give your faithful listeners of the first 2 episodes some intel? What's up?
Yes, I would love to have more updates, but here's the strangest thing about pro skateboarders. They are tough to nail down. You wouldn't believe this, but
wow.
Not the most reliable people. When you get them and like, good for this weekend? Yep, we're good. And then the day before, they're like, hey, yeah, something came up. I'm going to Tokyo. Like, Tokyo, huh? Didn't have that on your calendar, a week ago. It's just Tokyo now. But so still trying to manage that. So hopefully there will be a return to form soon, but there's nothing concrete right now. But there's always there will be more. And yeah, just we'll see what happens with the hard times. We're always trying to cook up new ideas as far as podcast stuff, and we'll see what comes out, what doesn't, what fails, what succeeds, and then we'll just move on from there.
How can our listeners support you and your work?
So we just launched a new Hard Times merch store. So say you're the type of person that likes to wear a t-shirt. We have those for sale.
Wow.
If you have a record player and you want to play records of certain bands, you could also go to that Hard Times merch store and be like, oh, look at that. This new upstart band Fugazi. They have a couple of records in the store. Like, let me check out one of these. So that's the best way to support right now. And if you're in these tight economic times, if you're not willing to shovel out, we're charging $800 per record.
Of course.
If you're not willing, if you're not willing to spend that, just read an article, go to thehardtimes.net, be like, that's a funny headline. Let me see if there's anything funny in the article too. And because just maybe you'll laugh a little bit more from when you're reading the article. And that helps us because, hey, we're getting that ad money and we want that sweet, sweet ad money.
Hey, absolutely. And I mean, where can people go to learn more about you as in Bill Conway?
I try to,
ungoogleable.
I just want to be a hermit living in Frogtown, occasionally diving into the river over here. But my Instagram is I hate Bill Conway. Occasionally I'll post a story of my rapidly decaying body skateboarding and trying my best.
I think that's great. I mean, so last thing, what's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with today?
That if you are in a creative field of any kind, just understand that every 96% is going to fail and just focus on the 4% and then just keep going, because why not? Like the alternative is like, all right, I can always go back to that job in a warehouse, it's the gears are going to keep moving. It's just how are you going to dedicate your time to? And then also, if you don't have rich parents, then you're just going to have to work harder. Rich parents make everything easier.
Yeah, I can't relate to the rich parents thing either, but not having a plan B is usually a good kick in the ass. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Don't Fuck This Up, the podcast answering ultimate question: how the fuck did you land that cool job? Don't Fuck This Up is a podcast written, produced, and edited by Lauren Alvarez. New episodes dropping every Wednesday. Be sure to follow, rate, and review this and every episode. And until next week, please keep it together and try your best not to fuck this up.